For those who don't know, my name is Adriana, and I am a queer and non-binary Mexican-American reviewer, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by Alechia Dow, author of The Sound of Stars, which came out on February 25th, so that's good news. If at any point in this discussion you think, damn, I need that book, which, spoiler alert, you will think that at some point, it is now available for purchase and request. So you should definitely take advantage of that. So thank you so much for being here, Alechia. We're so excited to have you, and welcome to Quarantine Pages.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
I can only speak for myself and Incendiary, but we saw you on your panel for the Social Distance Book Fest, and it was amazing. You were fantastic, and we just loved your energy and your spirit and your purpose. And like every time you were going to answer a question, you just snuck a book recommendation in there, which was so relatable and so good. We loved it. Before we get into the discussion proper, I couldn't fit this into a question, so I'm just going to say it here. Personally, like as a queer reviewer, really wanted to thank you so much for putting in the representation of Ellie being pan and demi-ace, and Morris also being demi-ace, and then being in this beautiful, like deeply queer relationship that's so intimate and so soft, and I loved it. I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm really glad it resonated with you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So anyone who's looking for like books to read for Pride Month or just in life, you know, Sound of Stars is where it's at. For those joining us who don't know, how would you describe The Sound of Stars?
The Sound of Stars is it's a story about a rebel teen librarian who, after the aliens have taken over Earth and made books, art, music, all illegal, human expression illegal. She keeps this illegal library and lends out to patrons in one of the last human centers on Earth. And about a music-loving alien boy who is in desperate need of more music. And when he finds a book that belongs to the rebel teen librarian, instead of delivering her to execution, he asks her to help him find more music. And what becomes a road trip story on how to save humanity, but also a love letter to music and books and everything that connects us.
To start off, obviously, like I said, your book came out on February 25th, so it released like right before the pandemic was declared, which obviously, sadly to our detriment, none of us were really thinking about at that time. So do you feel like you've been impacted by that in any way as an author?
Well, I mean, I had flown to the US to be there a week after it had launched, and I had planned to be at Novatine Book Festival, and I had planned to have 2 different launches in New York. I had to fly back to Germany before Germany closed up their borders, and I didn't get to do any of my book stuff, and I was really sad about that. Since then, it's been really hard to like promote myself or promote my work, and I'm just kind of taking it one day at a time and hoping that people are talking about the book and that they're, telling people to read it, and hopefully that's making a difference and that it finds its audience that way, because it's a really tough time to debut and it's unprecedented. We don't know what we're doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just kind of hopeful that things will get better and that we'll find a way through it.
I agree. It's been a hard time for creators. Like, how do I center myself and my work and like celebrate? It's a huge milestone. It's like you put a lot into it. It's a really important story. It's like, how do I make space for that with all these other things happening? So I definitely know what you mean.
Just this week, it's been really rough, and you don't want to promote yourself. You don't want to promote your work. You want to be focused on the community and how we can help people. It's so tough to just focus on yourself as an author, or focus on yourself as a member of humanity and being Black in the US. It is a rough time. I don't know what to do really. I want to be present and helpful, and I don't really want to focus too much on my book at the time. It's tough to have to do that. I haven't really found the balance yet.
Yeah, I don't think any of us have. Kind of related to that, your story isn't necessarily about like a disease. It is about colonization, which colonizers are a disease, but they're not a medical disease. And there are depictions of like humans being in lockdown, sort of cut off from each other, being placed under strict restrictions, albeit under very different circumstances and conditions. But has the current state of the world made you look at the world that you've created in a different way or with a different lens?
I wrote The Sound of Stars in 2016. It was before Trump was elected president. Because I was raised the way I was, and I'm, I am a Black American, and I am living in Germany, and I was watching from the outside as this was happening. I knew that Trump was going to win, so I already had just made that in that story already, because I just kind of was like, this is going to happen, and just imagine an alien invasion at the same time. I had that kind of thought going into it, and how this would shape the world, and how that would shape an alien invasion at the same time, and how division really would make it easy to conquer, and also how to find hope in these times of darkness. So those were the thoughts I had going in when I was writing it. And as it kind of went through revision process over and over for the next 2 years, it was really, making sure that it was still relevant. And it's still relevant. And I don't think anything has really changed. My view of the world has always been kind of, I think I was a little pessimistic, honestly. It hasn't really changed that much, and I think it's still relevant, and I think it's going to be relevant for years to come, and that's both sad, but it's also, I wrote it for teens specifically who are fighting against oppressive forces and institutional racism and gun laws and all of these things that are going on, and we have teens that are fighting that in climate change, and I wrote it for them, and I don't predict them not having that fighting spirit going forward. So I hope that it finds them and that it gives them hope.
We're going to talk about it a little bit later, but I do think, like you said, it addresses the realistic issues that teens and marginalized people face, especially, while also making space for joy and hope, which I think is really important, especially now more than ever. So I think it is a relevant read, and like you said, it's going to be relevant for quite some time, which is good because we need stories like this. On a very different note, your characters, Ellie and Morris, like you mentioned, are very attuned to books and music, respectively. And one of my favorite details in the story is that Ellie's chapters begin with popular book quotes, and Morris's chapter begin with popular song titles. How did you decide which songs and quotes to include? Was it influenced by what was happening in the story? And how long did it take you to sort of look all that up and finalize all of those things?
It wasn't that long. What I was thinking when I was doing it was, what kind of stories and songs would you want at the end of the world? What's going to survive toward the end of the world? What are people going to remember and going to keep with them at the end of the world? And those are the stories, the classics, and the things that have kind of shaped popular culture in some ways.
To piggyback off that, since we were just talking about books, and you mentioned as you were sort of giving a synopsis for the book that Morris finds a book from Ellie's library and it totally changes his life and his worldview on humans. And I love that the book that completely rocks his world is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, which is awesome, an amazing book. So obviously you could have taken that moment to reference any book and spotlight any author in the world. So why did you choose The Hate You Give? And how did you navigate also discussing someone else's YA book in your YA book?
I was really careful. Mess that up. I love The Hate You Give. I imagined that if you're going through some really difficult times and you feel like your voice has been taken away from you, that this is a story that gives you hope and makes you feel strong. And especially for a Black girl teen to read that and go, okay, I'm going to keep lending out my books even though it's illegal and could get me killed. And Morris reading it would have paralleled his situation as well, because he also feels like he doesn't have a voice and that he doesn't know how to speak up for himself. And he sees all these things going on, but doesn't know how to necessarily do anything about it. And I think him reading this made him feel empowered a bit to really go ahead with his plan and try to save humanity in his own way. I really wanted to see how that could inspire him to be more motivated to want to change the world. I just wanted to include it all because that's Ellie's world. She loves her books and she sees the world through her books, and that has helped her feel connected, and that's how she has always felt comfortable with herself.
I know. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was, I think, one of the more interesting parts of the story is that obviously she doesn't have access to all the books in the world, so it's she's sort of using oral tradition almost to re-put those stories back into the world and share them with Morris. So that was really interesting to be oh, that's the Hunger Games, oh, that's Harry Potter, but she's not not calling it those things.
Yeah, she's just talking about them, and it's just the stories that you would want to keep at the end of the world. Though, I mean, we're in a weird place with Harry Potter at the moment, and I don't think that's going to change.
We are.
If you're telling an alien who doesn't know anything about Earth and Earth stories, that might be something you bring up without talking about the authors. I feel like we could get away with that.
We can. I like to say Harry Potter just spontaneously came into being. I don't know who wrote it. It's part of the canon, and there it is.
Well, if you're in The Sound of Stars, it's now Ellie's story. She's like, actually.
It's an Ellie original. I'd mentioned the relationship between Ellie and Morris before. I think it's a really, really beautiful relationship. So something I love about The Sound of Stars is that even though Ellie and Morris are feeling out this friendship between them, Ellie really makes a point of not coddling her colonizer and not making excuses for Morris and the Allori, which Morris eventually learns to do for himself as well. So why was it important for you to portray that nuance the way you did?
I wanted to make sure that there were no weird power dynamics between the two of them. It looks one way at the beginning, but it's actually another as you learn throughout the course of the story. I got to explore how Morris sees his world, how he sees his race, how he begins to transition away from them, and what he wants to do and what he wants to accomplish. To me, in my brain, Ellie is not a forgiving person, and it takes a really long time for her to forgive. From the beginning, she's not really about wanting to save the world, because to her, the world hasn't been great to her. It hasn't been great to each other, and she doesn't see how a future can go on the way it was in the past. Her feeling that way is kind of bleeds over to her relationship with Morris. Sure, he's made promises. Sure, he promises to be better, and he wants to be better, but it means nothing to her until the action is there. It had to be that way that she could come to trust him. And it took a while, and I wanted there to be like this kind of openness between them where they understand where they are respectively and how they want to continue. It's a romance, but it's also very slow, and it's also just really about finding connections where there weren't before.
Related to that, because we were talking sort of about Morris's journey, he has a really interesting one, of course. So I only speak for myself when I say I love soft AI sort of characters discovering their own humanity and agency, which is definitely Morris's journey to take in this story. How did you get into the mindset of a non-human character like Morris, and what challenges, if any, did you come across when you were writing his voice?
Morris was easier for me than Ellie. People are not going to believe that, but Morris has more of my personality than Ellie does. He's just really a cinnamon roll, and
he really is.
He just wants the world to be okay. He's been forced into a role where it won't be, and he's just trying to break free the entire time. So getting into his head was easy because I knew what he wanted from the beginning, and I knew how I wanted him to get there. I want him to be like a little bit bubbly, a little bit naive, a little bit over the top sometimes, and extremely cheesy, and that's just how he is, and I really don't foresee him being any much different, and I love that about him. It makes him feel very, I don't know, just approachable. He's really also not like holding back his emotions. He's very clear from the beginning about how he feels, and for someone who wasn't supposed to have emotions, he learns how to just give in to them very easily.
I love what you brought up about his feelings. He is very earnest. He is very straightforward. He wears his heart on his sleeve like 100%. And I love that about him. And I think that's also really interesting because it's like, how do I want to say this? We're taught over the years how to sort of suppress ourselves, and we sort of unlearn that earnestness that often we have probably as children, where it's just like, this is how I feel, this is how it is. And we learn to sort of like quiet ourselves and build in these walls as we grow up. So it's really interesting for him as a non-human character. He doesn't have any of those barriers. He doesn't have any of those reservations. He doesn't have to unlearn how to be, silent about his emotions. So I appreciate that. I just want to say that I think he's amazing, and 10 out of 10 would die for him.
I mean, it was great. It was really great because Ellie is very closed off with her emotions in a lot of ways. She's very angry. She's very bitter. She has learned really early on as a young Black girl to not talk about herself, to not prop herself up, to not say anything, to just kind of go with the flow and not draw attention to herself. And it went back to my childhood as a young Black girl in a white town, and then being told by my dad, yeah, you don't talk about how great you are. You don't do this. You don't do that. You have to just keep it face blank, get through the day, survive. That's what you have to do. And then kind of applying that to Ellie, and she's complete opposite as Morris. She has all these feelings. She just doesn't express him the same way, and he's very open about his feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted them to kind of explore that way of it, which it's both humanity. It's just them exploring it in the different ways, and her learning from him and him learning from her.
We've kind of been touching on this a little bit here and there, but I really love that you were able to include so many realistic details about Ellie's life in the story, especially her experiences as a Black teen. You know, from the fact that she has to let her hair go natural because she doesn't have access to any more hair products, to the fact that she has experienced racism and alienation, which makes her view the state of the world very differently compared to other folks. And especially because as a Black teenager, she was always living in a dangerous and unsafe world, and now it's just dangerous and unsafe in new and different ways. So why was it important for you to include those kinds of details?
Because they haven't been done. When you read a lot of science fiction about revolutions and rebellions, it's always a white protagonist, and the white protagonist doesn't have to go, oh, I'm the only white person in the room. If I were in this situation, my first thought, if I'm stuck with a whole bunch of humans who are looking at me in a way that's not the nicest, I would be terrified, because I don't trust humans as much as I don't trust the aliens. So that's what I wanted. You know, I wanted to make sure that you see that behind Ellie's actions, and you see her fears, and you understand where she's coming from on this. She has those experiences that have shaped the way she views the world and the way she sees the future happening. And I wanted her to show her bitterness at the world and how it has shaped her from the very beginning of her story, and how it might change with the knowledge that she can shape the future. Mm-hmm. She can be the person who's in charge of it. I personally don't recall seeing a Black teen girl get to be the person who gets to change the world. Yeah. It just doesn't happen that often. Mm-hmm. I wanted to give her that chance to see what she could do and what she would make of it if she could.
And then it's also interesting because it also sort of complicates her journey, because it's like, on principle, you would think we should be saving the world, right? But she's also like, does humanity deserve a second chance in the first place? So I think that's also really interesting.
I don't know if I would be like all gung-ho about change, like saving the world, mm-hmm. when the reason the aliens came was the world was already so divisive. There was climate change that they had no plan of how to help or make the world better. You've got politicians and leaders that do not care about their own people. At that point, all she sees is that historically, we have not come a long way at making everyone equal. So why should we have a future where we can do that again, where we can just create these same problems over and over and over again?
And I really appreciate those nuances and those complications, because to me it makes your world feel more real than if those things were absent. Like, I see those things, I'm like, okay, she gets it. You know, she's living the life that I see and I understand, so that makes it more approachable for me personally.
One thing, so Sherry says, literally been thinking about that all week. Is the world worth saving? What would they do with that? Given everything that has happened this week, and the interesting timing of your book dropping now, while, you know, with the backdrop of everything that's happening, you know, what do you make of the timing of it, right? You couldn't have imagined that this was going to be the context for your debut, right?
I know that the reality of the situation is that good things take a lot of time to achieve. And in the US, it takes an especially long time. We watch teens today fight for things that they shouldn't be having to fight for. I wish that it would go away. I wish that the world would be a better place for them. But right now, I don't foresee that happening just yet. I still feel like it's going to take a while. And that's really a tragedy. It really is so unfair. I didn't want my book to just kind of make it more dark. I just wanted to reflect the society in which Ellie was living, in which I'm used to living in, and then just kind of take it a different way, but still find the hope. And that's really what I try to do, is to find the hope, even when it looks like there isn't any. And to take that hope and then feel empowered by it and strive for change. I feel like when you are writing contemporary science fiction and you're focusing on a Black main character and you are a Black author, it is impossible to not include social issues because these are on our minds. This is very much ingrained into who we are, for better or worse.
On a very different note, as I have said before, I really love the relationship between Ellie and Morris, especially because there's terrible things happening around them and the state of the world is more uncertain than ever before, which again, unintentionally relatable. And yet they're still able to find these pockets of joy and they continuously make space to like shut out the world and just live for themselves and like for each other, which is really awesome. So how did you balance the tension of the story with those moments of love and joy and lightness?
I know when I was writing the story that you need a pause here, that you need to step away from all of this and just let them be themselves and to let them have these moments where they can, because otherwise there is no hope. If you're just focused on getting from point A to point B and you're not going to slow down and examine as to why they're trying to do this and to why they need these moments of hope and happiness and joy, then it's a story that won't entice people. It's a story that just, it loses a little bit of its depth, and we need the depth there. And we need these characters to understand themselves, understand each other, and to have these moments that keep them going and gives them hope for the future. It's always going to be there. There's always going to be racism. There's always going to be these things, unfortunately, that won't change. But how you handle them and how you navigate through this new world is going to change. And I really wanted to focus on that. And I also really wanted to have joy in it. I wanted them to appreciate humanity and life and love the things that are worth fighting for.
We obviously love asking authors for their book recommendations, and I know this is where you excel because you have a background as like a librarian and you're a writer and you're a book lover, and especially because your contemporary sci-fi is so unique and sort of genre defined in its own way. What do you think are some books that you would recommend for people who want to read even more stories like yours?
I did read Laura Beth Johnson's Goddess in the Machine. That was super good. That was so good. And I read Rebecca Coffindaffer's Crown Chasers, which is also extraordinary. I really want to read Bethany C. Morrow's Song Below Water because she's just an incredible author and everything she says is just kind of like magic. She's just a genius. And Adiba Jaigidar's Henna Wars is phenomenal, just amazing, and I think everybody should read it. The Disasters by M.K. England.
Yes.
Really fun.
Yes.
Really, really fun. I have a lot.
I know. I will second also Spellhacker by M.K. England as well. Is amazing.
I have it on my shelf. And I'm like, I gotta get to that. Incendiary by Zoraida Cordova. Oh my goodness. Whew. Yeah, I can't wait for Namina Forna's The Gilded Ones.
Yep.
And I really want Legend Born by Tracy Dion and Song of Wraith and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. I'm getting already ahead of myself. Slow it down. You know, I really loved Enchantée by Guida Trelez. I thought that was a really beautiful historical fiction, and I'm not really into historical fiction, but that book, I sat down and I read it. I dug it. It just got in my whole heart. And I was like, this is really good. And I think the sequel to that is coming out soon. So everybody should read that. Justin A. Reynolds, Opposite of Always, was also really joyful. Mara Rutherford, A Crown of Coral and Pearl. She is also an incredible writer. And I just only imagine she's just going to get amazing, more and more amazing.
On a different note, were there any books that you took inspiration from to write The Sound of Stars?
I love Mary Lou. I knew I wanted to write science fiction because of Mary Lou and Octavia Butler. Those were in my brain when I was starting to write. And I love science fiction in general. I love watching science fiction. X-Men is like, my entire childhood was X-Men. And I was pretty certain I was an X-Men for a long time. I'm still disappointed that I'm not. Because of that, I knew I wanted to write science fiction. And since then I'm dabbling in contemporary fantasy too. I took inspiration from them. And my new book that's coming out in 2022 is called The Kindred, which is a nod to Octavia Butler, of course.
Yes.
it's like Ben Solo and Rey, their mental connection. But imagine they've been connected since birth, like Sense8. And imagine they're from two different like castes where one is like royal and one isn't. And then they escape their world together to go to Earth. And then they have to learn how to like fit in with humans and what it's like to be a black alien on Earth.
That sounds so good. Like, can we cancel 2020 and get to 2022? Because that sounds fantastic.
I really wanted to talk about, like, can you imagine being a black alien and like going to Earth and being like, wait a minute, what is happening here? What is this? So I really wanted to focus on that. It's a lot like The Sound of Stars, but it's this also, they have this connection, and it's like, it's really a deep connection, and they really love each other, and it's really fun. It's just so fun.
I'm glad you brought up Octavia Butler too, because a lot of people in the chat were like, this is giving me like Parable of the Sower vibes, and I was like, yes, but like softer and like with music and books. Like, yes, that's exactly it. Before we wrap up, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but obviously I personally am extremely excited about your voice, your talent, your perspective. Are there any new books or projects, I know you touched on the Kindreds, that you're currently working on or that we can expect from you in the future?
Okay, so I have 2 books outside of the Kindred. I just finished my last round of revisions on a foodie fantasy that's a lot of food, very queer, kind of paranormal. And if you like magical food in small towns, this is the book for you. It's really fun, and there's recipes in it that I have been writing over the years. So it's a lot of joy, and I hope that's a book I get to share with the world at some point. And then I wrote a very twisty dystopian, an assassin girl teaming up with a really kind of bad boy. It's if Nakia and Killmonger joined together to change their world. And you can't trust either of them working together. Like, they could not. She would have good ideas. He would not. They're kind of at each other's throats the entire time. It's a very, like, twisty book that you're not sure who's good or who's bad until the very end. So, foodie fantasy, dystopia, and the Kindred.
I'm, like, over here having, like, a full-on gay panic because those sound freaking awesome, and I cannot wait to have them.
They're all here. Of course they are.
Oh my god, I know. Okay, I can't wait. Obviously, you're interested in like sci-fi and SFF, but would you ever branch out into any other genres or demographics, or do you feel like that's the space you want to explore the most?
I think I could possibly do an adult rom-com one day.
Ooh.
I think I would like to, because I have a lot of funny ideas. I don't foresee that happening anytime soon. I really love working in the YA space, mostly because I want to be able to write books that inspire teens and that resonate with teens, makes their world a little brighter for a little bit if I can. I feel very honored that I get to write for that age group right now, and I hope I can do my best work and provide them with books that make them happy.
To wrap up here, where can people find you on the internet? How can they support you? Where can they get your books? Do you have any virtual events or appearances coming up that you want to plug, or just anything at all that you would like to plug for us?
You can find me on Twitter at Alechia Writes, ALECHIA WRITES. I'm on Instagram as at Alechia Dow, ALECHIADOW. I have a website, which is AlechiaDow.com. If you see a black girl sitting on top of a donut, you are in the right spot. But otherwise, I'm pretty much just in the zone of doing critiques for people and trying to help out everybody in the community as much as I can, and trying to do my best work in really weird times. You can always buy the book, request it from your libraries, ask a friend to share it with you, or if they have it, please review it online. I need those reviews.
Yes.
If you want to talk to people about it, that's great too. Great. Anything you want to do.
I agree, and that's a great reminder that library requests are so important. That's one way I support my library, because I feel like a lot of people are like, well, for book reviewers, collectors, like, are we in contention with the library? But it's like, I kind of see it as my responsibility. Like, yeah, I can get that book for myself, but like, I can also request it so that other people can read it, and that is important. All right, well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Alechia. We've loved every single second of it. We love it. You're fantastic, and I highly recommend your book to everybody here and everybody watching and everybody in the universe. But thank you again so much for being here. I know it was a commitment for you, so we really appreciate it.